Well, then, hello and a very warm welcome. My name is Patrice Bouédibéla, 186 and Scorpio. Doesn't have anything to do with the panel discussion, my height and my zodiac. But it is a relatively difficult topic. I wouldn't have thought so, because Silke, that I wanted to introduce, like anybody else, we thought, well, the topic that we will be discussing is actually done in 3 sentences. But times have obviously changed somewhat, and this is for safety or security's sake. You have to say, of course, there will be a few provocative sentences, because I also want to make sure that we do not forego the other perspectives. Speakers and Sneakers, second edition, a few things have happened. We thought, well, COVID is over, now we're facing logistics problems, but we can also be grateful for this COVID time, because it allowed us to actually set ourselves apart from consumption, consumers, and the way we deal with each other. And if we had been asked, what about women in the sneakers world? Is there, are they put at a disadvantage? I would have said no, and if so, if this is so bad, who knows? But the more I actually address this situation, I found when I prepared for this panel discussion with the speakers, I found out that there are many facets that you not have on the radar, because you're sort of kept in your bubble. And hopefully, I will be able to invite people here to actually get a clearer view of the situation, using sneakers as an example, and the fact that half of the world population is considered or not considered in this segment. Of course, there will be some society-critical issues, but basically, I want to see a respectful treatment of each other and the acceptance that there are also people around with another opinion. And I'm very, very happy. It's so sad that you still have to mention it, but when we talk about half of the population of this earth, of the human population, that we have around where we men are the minority, because usually when we talk about women, it would be sad to just have one female panelist trying to be representative for the remaining 4 billion women. So I do hope for a very diverse discussion about this topic. And the aim for me, after we've introduced the panelists that are joining me here today, the aim would be to see why are the things the way they are, and to maybe discuss, are there any possibilities to change this? If so, yes, and if not, well, fine too. We're not solutions-oriented, no. We want to animate people to actually discuss and deal with things outside the own bubble. Let's start to my extreme right with a lady whom I've known for almost 20 years now. Yes, we've known each other for 20 years. Yeah, yes. From my team when I was still working as presenter for MTV, and I was invited to some events, and my context with the hip-hop culture was, of course, that you were happy about every Nike or Adidas invitation, and Silke was in charge of the customers for Nike, and this is how we met at several events. Now she is a very successful boss and founder of Silk Relations, a successful agency, and this is why I'm so happy that Silke Bolms is with us today. Yes, this does deserve an applause, yes, indeed, because over time she has always looked at developments. She was one of the early influencers co-developing, and I think that this aspect is very important. Then to my right, I've got a lady coming from nearby, but now feeling at home in the Ruhr Valley. And she is in customization, so craftsmanship is important, and crafted elements are important. It's exclusive is her company, and under this aspect, I found it interesting to discuss whether sneakers are a gender-specific topic. And so, welcome, Jette or Henriette Wagener. To my left, I have another lady, and I was asked, can't we actually get a little closer? She looks at about presenters, and obviously there is a medical publication missing on this one. This is why I'm not qualifying as a candidate, but we can talk about her business experience, because this lady also was fed up at a certain time with the selection of sneakers for women. Then she opened a store in Cologne with her partner. The store is no longer available. Why? The motivation, how this developed. This is what I would also like to discuss. A very warm welcome to Anke Lönne. Thank you. Well, and he is not only a quota guy on the stage. No, I can compliment him on his blue eyes, not only reserved to men compliments. He's a very attractive young man, and I philosophized with him about many things when we prepared this panel discussion. And I know if we carried on, we would be sitting there by tomorrow afternoon. But his experience as a young man in Herzogenaurach with a big company with the 3 stripes, and he worked with Stella McCartney and the famous daughter of the One Beatle, but who actually made herself a reputation because she acts sustainably. And we will talk with Silke about this. But now he's a consultant, also a student. Mathematics is his topic, so many solutions are also feasible with mathematics. And this is what I would also like to touch upon within this context. So, Stefan-Christoph Methner, I'm happy to have you here on the stage. And now, on the big screen, you can hear that this young lady on the monitor, unfortunately, didn't make it to Düsseldorf. She is sitting in her home, in my home, I thought first, but considering the sizes of the boxes, it is the bedroom of the Sneakerqueen. It's not my bedroom. I've known this woman through her sister when she was still a girl. So she has always been in this scene, and this is why it's all more interesting to hear how the relationship between women and sneakers has changed over time and developed. She is a photographer, professional photographer, but still loves sneakers, as you can see. So she doesn't see this as a fashion accessory, but much more than that. And this is why I'm so happy to have her with us. Julia Schoierer, a very warm welcome to you. Well, now I would like to close this round of introductions. Everybody who wants to contribute, do so, please. If I've forgotten about your careers or whatever, your school training. But I would like to kick off with Silke when I said we had this conversation, and the topic is that women are sort of disadvantaged in the sneaker game. And I thought, well, this is done in 3 sentences. Since we talked about this, has anything changed? How would you like to complete this conversation? Well, it was a story. When we started 17 years ago with marketing, I did think that women were sort of left out. When we did all of the initiatives for Nike, we always looked at men first, the male bloggers, and the hype, and the tier 1. And these shoes were available from size 40, European size 40. And it was always a problem for us to get these really cool or hip hype shoes. What's tier 1? Well, this is the cooperations with Nikes that are only available in a limited edition of 100 or 200 and only available in very selective stores where you have to apply and you have to send online in front of the stores to get these shoes. And when you looked at who actually stood in front of these stores, it was little boys. There were hardly any girls. Maybe the company, their brothers, because these super hyped shoes were only available from size 40. I don't know what it's like today, but I think it's the same thing. If I want to have a really cool Air Force, then I had to wear thick socks because I had to wear the 40. And this was getting on my nerves. This was not really cool. And now when other companies like Veja, they're not making any differences between men's and women's shoes. There's one collection available from 36 to unfortunately 44, but that's going to change soon. And there is no separation between women's and men's shoes anymore. And I think this is very modern and the right approach, I think. And this was one aspect of the whole thing. Yeah, but what you just said with sizes, and I guess I can actually jump in here. What I experienced is when there was a drop, the Jordans was the epitome of sneakers. There was either black or white. That was the big theme back then. And back then, when women wanted to have some, their feet were so small that they went for the junior size, which was a difference of 50%. And they only paid 150 Deutschmarks for this, while I had to pay 300 Deutschmarks, and I felt as a disadvantage. And when we got to know each other, Bergind, who worked for MTV as well, he was beyond the 46. He always had to travel to the US and return with an extra bag. So I never thought it to be a disadvantage. It was a rule. Yes, but back then, the fact is that there were different target groups. Women who back then were interested in those hype shoes. This was a very low percentage. It was us, yeah, who thought these shoes were cool. And then you actually did not really relate to these idols, Michael Jordan. It was always men backing up all of these collaborations. And when you were a boy type girl like myself, you felt related to this. You wanted to be part of this. I always wanted to be cool with the boys, hip. I want to be part of them. And this is why I also want to have these shoes. But this is an important aspect. Why do I want to have these shoes to start with? There is a purpose behind this. This is a community feel, and I want to have access to this community. And this has slightly changed, although the role models, the icons are still men. In the sports area, we had a number of women, then it was sports shoes. Serena Williams, for instance, her shoes. And I could not really relate to those sports icons either. The women's sneakers were more on a technical level. Men have different ways of running from women. The move, I think, only arrived when the sneakers started to move away from being a hype and were charged up with other topics such as sustainability. So you started discussing about the story of a shoe in a community. I'm now wearing a Veja, thereby showing that the environment is important to me, that sustainability is important to me, and that they cooperate with Sea Shepherd. When traveling to Berlin, to Düsseldorf, I saw many people wearing Veja, and it was only women. Only women wearing Veja shoes. Today, I saw 7 or 8 or 9 women wearing Veja shoes. So this is probably the idea underlying the unisex shoes, with a different story than just a cool basketball play. I think this has changed. That the hype, especially or particularly for women, has changed to I want to underline my personality with what I wear. Well, we should talk about Veja a little later because sustainability will be a topic later. And the reason why there are more women wearing Veja, it's summer and it's the summer season. Birkenstock, for instance, in Lichtenberg, the Veja percentage is lower than at Prenzlauer Berg. Well, it's always the target groups. And for Nike, with Nike, we also did shoes for a more democratic group of women. Can you remember the Metro shoes by Nike? It didn't really work. All these lifestyle sneakers that are geared to women were geared to women. The Duncans with the heel. Can you remember? Who wears such shoes? It was was no longer the hype girls who wanted to be part of a community. It was done for a target group of women who would never wear sneakers, and it did not really work too well. There were studies, and we've just heard about a market research saying that women don't want this shoe specifically designed for women. It has never really worked, I think. Well, you've heard it. We're done with this topic. It makes sense what she said. So it is not putting women as a disadvantage. Oh. Yeah, I would definitely like to comment on this. Yes, Julia, please. She's been waiting for that. I do have a slightly different background in terms of my sneaker interest, of course. When in the 90s I started to become interested in sneakers, served as a status symbol for people of a male gender, as Silke said, because the stories, the lifestyle stories backing up these shoes had been written by men. Nevertheless, these lifestyle stories reflect a certain feeling, and I could indeed relate to this, although I could not associate with Michael Jordan. I could relate to this lifestyle, and this, of course, also includes the hip-hop culture and all of the other cultures that are essentially important to the sneaker scene. But I think that for this reason, women do not want collections that are specifically geared to their needs, because women don't want to be shown as being different, but a part of a culture that exists. And most of these stories are written based on it being different. And I think women that have sufficient influence on own cultures, but this would have to be perceived by the industry. What's your shoe size? Luckily 40. This is the smallest men's size that was produced back then 40 and a half later, and I found it difficult to find shoes, so I'm aware of this problem of the sizes. Like with Veja that you just mentioned, unisex sizes, size ranges would definitely make sense, because today's women are not consuming according to the scheme, like it or like it not, or male and women, male or female. No, they actually consume on the basis of I like it. And this is why unisex makes so much sense for all styles. Yes, please. Yeah, I would actually subscribe to this. Absolutely. Yes, I would subscribe to this. I think the fact that women are perceived as women, first and foremost, and that there is a certain image, they want pink and they want flowers, and we want to do something specifically for women. This is nonsense. When you look at the streets, one of the most popular shoes are Danglo Panda, black and white. It's a men's style, but almost every girl aged 16 to 18 is wearing this shoe. I personally never had this size problem, especially with the Jordans. You said, well, you can save 50 to 80 euros. I wore a lot of Jordans, size 43. I never had a problem in getting the men's sizes. The junior sizes are always a toned down version. It's not the right shoe. And this often happens, that the smaller sizes are produced with fewer details, different details, and cheaper materials. And when you then actually have this passion for shoes, then you want the real deal. You want the 4 Jordan and not the junior size. But if you can't get it in a 39 or 38, then this is quite a frustration. And what I've always often observed is when there was a good drop for women, that men said, only until size 41. That's stupid. I would have loved to wear it too. Like Silke and Julia, I think it does make sense to move away away from the gender sizing and to make things more inclusive. In view of overconsumption, I think you can drop less and instead more quality, higher quality. Yeah, but in this hype lifestyle bubble, my mother, for instance, loved the Nike Metro shoe, and for 10 years she loved it. And I think when you actually see a different target group of women, 50, 60, 70, they probably prefer wearing a women's sneaker that has a little silver or gold or Balenciaga, all of these high fashion brands that all have sneakers now. I think for that target group it makes sense, and this is why I'm saying this is so specific. The hype bubble that we are in, this is basically the tip of the iceberg, where this does not work. Where you should also say which markets you're talking about. Are we really talking about the hype market and that what drags mainstream, or are we speaking about the Foot Locker or whatever, the Foot Locker consumer who buys general releases? Dear Anke, she spoke about quality aspirations when they said, are we looking, did they really say, I'm looking for the highest quality shoe? I actually read an article about the sneakers that are currently in, and for me, it was sort of nonsense because it was not that sneaker by that artist. No, in autumn, the white sneakers are out. Now the high tops are moving back into focus. It does not actually have anything to do with whether they're well finished and whether you can make it through the winter. So what is your perception about how female customers see these? Do they really focus on quality, or how Julie described it? I would like to have something in orange. Yeah, both. Well, there's a big difference. You have them both. I found myself very, very understood by what Silke and Jette said. I always had the greatest sneakers, and there was one shelf for me, and for my friends, there was everything. And I always had pink glitter and florals, and I said, I don't want this. For us, it was an eye-opener when we opened the store to not only serve the collectors but also sell shoes that we like. And our first orders actually were an eye-opener because all of the contacts were male. Although we were actually over 40, we were the girlies. So look, the girlies are coming, and they were also nice with us, and they were fun to be with. But again, well, this is not so long ago. Your store was opened in 2016, so yes, right, it was 2016. And there too, when we place our orders, we found out very quickly we cannot sell and buy all the shows that we would like to sell. We had to make sure the audience was so mixed. We had the fashion-focused buyers who said, oh, now there's purple metallic and I want to have it. But then there were shoppers that also that we had to send away because we had to tell them we would like to sell it, but we can't buy it for you. Wow. The store as such no longer exists, but what was the reason? Because there were not enough women shopping there? No, it's a long story. It was also a change in my life. No, we haven't given it up for that reason. No, for me, it was, I had to learn that I'm not born to be a retailer, and my partner also realized that she was not made for being self-employed. So it had nothing to do with being frustrated or saying, well, it's all shit, it doesn't work. No, it doesn't have anything to do with that. No, I simply wanted to make this clear. Sneakers for men don't work. No, we got a very, very positive feedback. We were received very well by the women. We sold many shoes, retailed many shoes, shoes that we didn't want to have. It was a different client base that we served, but that's part and parcel of Julia, as you're also from Berlin, you know Overkill. That was an interesting development. Overkill, next door, basically, and they made a special store just for women. You have seen all of these stores. Do you see it as a success story, or do you think that everything should be available in one store in all sizes? I think it continues to be important to have such stores. I am around the corner from Overkill, so I actually pass by the store almost on a daily basis, and I can see the shoppers in there. And I think we continue having a deficit for kids' shoes in this area, for sneakers, not only for women. And this is why this women's Overkill store is of essential importance, because it bridges the gap to what I would see as normal as a collector. And this is the inclusive offering, the unisex world regarding the sneaker culture. And in these stores, especially with Overkill's women's, you primarily see families shopping with kids, because such stores can order completely different contingents than other stores that also retail sneakers. So the range is better, and this also attracts men. On the other hand, you also have to say Overkill women or women's stores in general continue to be in the shadow of the men's stores, because they can't cause the same stir with the drops and the launches. Well, say something, Stefan. I'm with these girls all the time. No, as I said, you worked for Adidas, you worked with Stella McCartney, because they wanted to show sportsmen in a different light, but it was more about sustainability. But when you listen to all of this, you also co-developed garments, and unisex was important to you. So can you understand from your perspective what was said here before, or do you have another approach regarding this topic, maybe in terms of sustainability? Well, up front, you can say, and this also struck me when I gave it some thought, where does this culture come from? You can generalize again, of course. You can say that the culture in which we live is made by men. That's the image. This is projected, and it also is reflected in the sneakers scene or community. And it's an interesting story when you take a closer look. I come from the designer's background, rather. This means I have designed a lot, and I'm not so much part of the community. I simply observe it, and I try to keep a distance always, because I feel that this benefits creativity. The women's image was important to develop for Stella McCartney, and I started at a very early stage, first as a assistant, then as a technical designer, and assistant to the creative director. And it was important back then to build a different collection, and the input by Stella is a very feminist one, and it's a very up-to-date feminism. I thought to not focus on how you actually twist women to be men, but to simply accept women as women, and that you create something caught between an androgynous look to a sophisticated, posh style, all the way down to Italo disco, and that everything is okay, that everything is part and parcel of this scene, and that everything is part of this world, rather than trying to focus on marketing service. Was this a purely pure women's discussion? There were some shots, Olympics, for instance, where whole teams were dressed up, and when you actually dress up teams, then you have to also dress men. But this was more of a side business. But yes, it was a women's only. And I'd say it was a link between the market research, 90s design, marketing research driven, and with a self-confident women's image. Today, I also have my criticism about it. When you look at the typical Stella girl, for instance, maybe she was just ahead of her time. Why we girls wanted to be part of the boys community, I don't know, but we wanted to be like boys, just as cool. Maybe this is changing now, that as a woman, when you grow up, maybe that you feel more solidaric with women and support a Stella McCartney. I would have gone for the Dunk rather than the Stella shoe, and apart from that, it was too expensive to my mind. But also in terms of the background and the story, I found it more interesting to hang out with the boys on the basketball courts than to opt for the feminist avenue. You know what I mean? Maybe this changes with the new, more democratic brands, and I can also see it with you. The boxes, for instance, it is limited to a bunch of brands. It's Adidas, Reebok, Rebalance, Adidas, Puma, and they're collector's items. The Veja shoes will never be collected. Well, this is a justified question. How much force did you have to sacrifice for this decor? May I come in on this one regarding sustainability? This is a story that has kept me thinking for quite a number of years, and I regularly post blogs on this because I simply cannot understand why you always have to strike a compromise between sustainability and lifestyle. I have the feeling that many sustainable shoes have this problem of servicing the hype lifestyle segment. They don't reach this segment, and I think that this is a fact that they try to hit the biggest market available so that they can get a foot in the door, commercially speaking. And nevertheless, I think that it is important that in the women's footwear segment, as it is in the sustainability segment, we understand that lifestyle is an important category, and that functionality in lifestyle is the design and not the functionality of a shoe. Yes, this hype is always created by limited editions. There are only 100 available, and stories. Yeah, but democratic companies like Veja simply don't do it. They would not limit a specific segments. They do have corporations with money that are highly demanded, but in a democratic environment, somebody like you would not collect a Veja shoe. Why? Because it is not part of this hype segment, and we're talking about target groups again. But in the street, you see very basically democratic many of these shoes, and they've captured a certain time. They look nice, you signal a message with them, and they have a certain popularity, but without all of that hype. It's not the hyper moment. But when we prepared this panel discussion, we also said that this was also a misjudgment. This is a vegan shoe. Vegan is also sustainability, but sustainability is not focused on Veja. Veja is not a vegan brand. No. The V in Veja stands for Veja, but not, and it's Portuguese because the company comes from France and from Brazil. And many think this was a vegan shoe and they're only doing vegan shoes. This is not true. don't make me lie, but I think 25% of the range are only vegan, and they are labeled as such. They work a lot with the cow hides that are left over in Argentina, or the fish hides, for instance, and they're turning this into fish hide or fish leather shoes or recycled shoes. But what about sustainability? Drama story, RTL, piano music in the background. Just imagine this. But when we talk about sustainability, then it not only refers to manufacturing processes. You mentioned the story of the details, that craftsmanship is important. This also speaks in favor of sustainability, that you wear a shoe for more than 3 months because it does not lose the plastifiers and falls apart. Well, we needed persons like Michael Jordan because we used it to be the hunters and the collectors. You drank the blood of the animals. It's the same rituals. When you've bought the Jordan, then you've got the magical power of Michael Jordan. And it was also a status symbols. But then you started collecting them. And Chikma said this at the latest edition. And this resulted in minority complexes because we always felt the need to actually compensate for this toxic masculinity. Maybe it was the lifestyle that was forced upon you. I cannot say that I'm not interested in sneakers any longer. You don't know that because next week the next big thing will be out. And this is why it's interesting to discuss today whether women should participate in this hype. Is it really worthwhile discussing it? Because collecting so many shoes that we will never be able to wear is not really sustainable. Julia, you said you have to make a distinction between lifestyle and sustainability. So what is really important there? The market thrives on limitation. It would be the worst thing to do away with the limitation, because then the interest would no longer be there. I don't see it as a conflict. Yes, of course. Collecting things is, of course, not sustainability, or accumulating things is not sustainable. But I don't think that my passion for sneakers results from a minority complex that I want to play with the boys. No, it's rather the feeling that I like the design and this lifestyle. I love being surrounded by beautiful things, and sneakers form part of this. Of course, they are certain status symbols. They have a symbolic value in society. But for me, this was rather a form of silent rebellion. I said the whole world says, well, you're just queuing for your friends to actually buy a shoe for your friend. They look down upon me. And in many sneaker circles, I actually have a lot more knowledge than my male companions in the sneaker community. I think the approaches are very different. Many women actually end up with sneakers through the fashion world, and the sneaker culture is experienced as a fashion approach. For me, it was the lifestyle and the hip-hop culture in my particular case, and I think the approaches are really different. But I do not think that that this is always a gap or hole that you want to fill. No, this is why I actually said it in my particular case. This is why I alluded to this drama situation, the piano and the RTL music. When Louis Vuitton, when Virgil Abloh passed away, actually launched the latest model, I was really very prone to buy them, although I had the crocodile version. If it only had been the Louis Vuitton print, it would have been cool alone. But then I thought 2,700 euros for a pair of shoes and the graffiti on it. was just a cheap photo print. It was not justified the price. And I learned to let loose and understand I am not the market segment. I'm sure many will have thought, of course I have it. But this is business. How many female collectors are there? There are not so many collectors. Items are usually male items. This is a business. You're not allowed to wear this shoe. When I had the Air Max Germany edition, I put it on. I went hiking, and they all said, "How can you actually take the shoe out of the box? It should be on the shelf." And I said, "Why?" So wearing the shoe is no longer involved. You have the sneaker collectors in New York and in the US. They have their shelves where they actually have Nike shoes for $200,000 that they've not even worn a single time. So this is, tell me, but this is sort of strange for women to turn it into a mega business. When I have cool shoes, then I wear it. So do I, so do I. Well, see the different approaches. Every woman, every collector has a different approach. But I do think, yes, with men, it is more the representative aspect of collecting. But women are also collectors. They collect. We know the Carrie Bradshaws of this world who collect high heels. But I think the approach is different with each and every one. And I continue believing that there are many female collectors, but the focus is simply different. And they never end up in the limelight that men are in. Yes, I looked at the fact that they're different women and they're different people. Ooh, I'm surprised now. No, kidding. What are the solutions, the approaches for solutions? So there is sort of discrediting, but is it desirable to have everything available? And if, how, and do we go from here? Very specific for some brands. When you actually tour the shoes, you think that the complete range is made up of sneakers, of course, with various, say, levels of genres. So how do we go from here? If it is a dilemma, how can we do away with it? Well, Hikmet, in an interview 1 or 2 years ago, once said that in future we must buy less, but in a better quality. His own brand, Sonra, actually produces extremely high-quality shoes made in Germany, and I have the feeling that this has to do with age. I initially also had 47 Jordans that were actually sold on after being actually cleaned with a toothbrush. I no longer do this. I do my own shoes now, and the approach I have has really changed over time. And I think that when communication changes, if you no longer just focus on the hype and the limited editions, well, there is room for pink shoes and florals, but that shouldn't be the only thing we're offered being women. And if women, in actual fact, are really animated to buy higher quality shoes, then you buy one proper shoe instead of 3 low quality shoes manufactured under unbearable conditions. This is a development that takes place here. And I now have the feeling that it plays a bigger role, not so much in the sneaker area, but in the apparel segment. People take a closer look at where are they made, how are they made, where are they made. I actually experience this very often in my workshops. When people get into touch or are confronted with craftsmanship, then their view changes. It takes quite a while to take such a shoe apart. Maybe I have to invest a little more when I buy a new one. But Stefan, for instance, it all makes sense what we're saying here, from my bubble perspective even. But how can you do this? How can you actually put this into practice? But you know, the way to hell is actually paved with good intentions. Do you think that it is feasible in societal terms that the range of the selection is not limited for shoppers, and are human beings built for that, made for that? Well, commercially speaking, nothing is sustainable because resources are limited. This is a clear statement, and you can do some greenwashing and all of that. You can also look at these stories critically regarding of what the shoe brand says. As soon as plastics are used, you can actually imagine the rest. It's not cool. Sure. The question is rather, how do we deal with our resources? It is a very technical process, and you said before the fashion people are not delivering, they're not joining the fray. But this has to do with the fact that this is a technical business. You have to get people who know about chemistry, who are technically trained and skilled. This is relatively scientific at the end of the day. And then add the design. In other words, the question is rather, can you use the conventional methods, whether it's the management or in practice the communication or marketing or the product development? Can you use the conventional avenues to get to reach this idea of sustainability? I think that this is an important question that you ask yourself. Well, I would also would like to propose the thesis that women have pushed the sustainability factor more than men, I'd say, but I don't have any statistics for that. Yeah, because it's a niche segment. Yes, it used to be a niche segment, but now, in the meantime, for the ocean by Adidas, they produce 2 or 3 millions of them. But I think that women, when shopping, take a closer look there than boys. You can say, okay, Nike are also doing a lot about sustainability. They can produce billions of sustainable shoes, but when you actually stand in front of the shelf and you see the Veja shoe and you say it's 100% sustainable, then probably opt for this one. Yes, I think we could intend, or at least have the intention that we actually focus on the purpose thinking, the purpose approach. So I have the feeling that a company cannot always be reproached. They say people want this, we can't do anything else. But when you look at 1 or 2 brands, they'd say, well, in future, knowing that many of the big brands only supply the design, but the production is outsourced. And it doesn't come as a surprise that when we're talking about virtual realities, the NFTs and all of the tokens, that there are sufficient tokens for everyone. But then the scarcity issue would go away. But power is consumed. This is also a sustainability issue. So I still find it difficult to come up with a solution to make this available for each and every one, because the interest actually results from the limited editions, from scarcity, and the companies have mastered in creating this covetedness. I spontaneously thought you have to open the bubble first and allow other shoes to enter the bubble besides Reebok, New Balance and whatsoever, to create a hype for sustainable shoes. Or alternatively, if all of the hype was digitalized, because if you don't wear the shoes anyway, then it makes a difference whether they're the digital shoes in the metaverse or real shoes. You can actually live your passion in a digital fashion, collect them digitally, but in the real life, you wear the shoes that are 100% sustainable, that actually have a good carbon footprint, Party for the Ocean, you name it, Stella McCartney, Veja, and that actually do something good in the world. This would be a step to take in 10 to 15 years when you include this digital realm, because the hype goes on digitally. The digital Nikes are hype as much as the real ones are. So this is a quick step. and gender neutral. Yes, gender neutral. Yes, true. The digital hype, I think that the digital hype, the NFTs that we're talking about and that already being negotiated or traded cannot be successful because we're still not living in this virtual world yet. It is a fact that, of course, the society tends towards this, that more people will spend more time in the virtual world, and the more the importance will increase, the more the virtual society will establish itself, the more important the NFTs will become. But this is a way of 10 to 50 years, not 15 years. I actually acquired the personal experience, and this is, I think, a good approach, that people are thrilled when they can repair their old sneakers. There are many brands already offering repair services. I used to have a YouTube channel. How do I re-dye them? How do I clean them? How do I bleach the sole? How do I change my old sneakers? You can really do a lot with even 20-year-old sneakers. There's a whole community of people who actually provide 20-year-old AMX with new soles because you need a completely new pair for the soles. This is a question of sustainability. But the clients, shoppers are interested in retaining their shoes and to make them preppy again exists. And if the bigger brands promoted it a little more, which is of course in contradiction with their capitalist interest of selling more, I think this would be a good approach. There were big brands who offered customizing at the store. I did this as well for brands, workshops where people learned how to finish shoes, but a repair service such as offered by Patagonia or Asia, for instance, this would actually produce a lot of PR, and which would make people happy when they can walk up there with their old shoes. Oh, look, there is a button missing. Please repair it. Or how can I repair it? Can I use your resources in the stores when the label has come off, for instance, that you can actually re-iron it with the original spare parts, or like you do with autos. This has become difficult because the parts are so interlinked. One of the important automotive manufacturers, when you're basically done with your leasing contract, you can't keep your car because each repair is far too expensive. No, I was talking about the originality of the parts, especially with the Jordans. The heel tabs break after 10 to 15 years. You can actually order 3D printed spare parts for 40, 50 years, and you sell them in, and then the shoe is wearable again. And if the brand actually offered the service with original parts or components, this would be a good approach. But realistically speaking, well, this is, of course, bridging a gap again. They want to sell shoes on the one hand. On the other hand, they say the most sustainable shoe is the one you wear. So this trend towards repairing and a long-lived shoe is there. But of course, in the long run, it is detrimental to manufacturers because the sales would go down. So part of this hype should probably cater to an additional domain. I would almost say that more women actually bring their shoes to be repaired. Yeah, wouldn't you have to do a field story? What you just said is an excellent example for what I offered theoretically. You turned it into a real-world example. It's a culture change that also changes business models. You can make money with everything. If you really want to do this, and if you calculate it well, then you can actually add another abstraction level. You open up a chain store that specializes in organizing the spare parts, distributing the spare parts to repair the pairs, develop processes and methods, which is difficult because we discussed this. When you work on a certain modification, then of course you can also get into trouble with companies. Yeah, sure. The company themselves should actually bandwagon on resources again. if we run out of resources and then prices go up, and there's these limited resources that are currently reflected by the prices and the calculation, because prices are going up for objects. And my personal thinking is the following. You're approaching a real state because everything was far too cheap. Everything. We're not moving towards sustainability. We're approaching a level that is sort of acceptable. Repairing, I'm thinking the same way. Just think about chips. When computers become so expensive that you can no longer buy a new one, then it would be nice to have a repair service for the old PC. How this can be translated to shoes, it takes experts, of course. But there is a wide variety of people who've become self-employed with the sneaker cleaning services. The average shopper does not have the material know-how to know how to clean a soiled suede. I don't feel like buying sandpaper and actually 15 different cleaning solutions. I'll send them in, and some people send in their soiled Air Force and have them cleaned. It's not probably the hype object or the collector's item, but people are keen on having their shoes repaired, and they actually save a lot of money at the same time, because they would be spending double the amount for a new Air Force. So the saving aspect is, and yes, this is a pragmatic argumentation. We're not about nice to have things. It has to be a must have. Yes, in moral terms, this is the right direction, so that we actually approach the circular economy. Whether this actually fits the capitalist system, whether it pays off commercially, is of course a question that each company needs to answer. But as soon as companies realize that the sneaker market is a market that sells emotions, that sells sentiments, that these sentiments are an important currency, an important asset to the consumer behavior, this realization should make companies who adopt cleaning and repair services, what Jette said. And this is not only the case in the sneaker community. We can see everywhere that repairs are getting more important, just for our own moral feelings. I at least feel better when I have a shoe repaired rather than buying a new one, because the sentimental value is increased even. Maybe because we're really running out of time. We should probably start to act with our perception. It looks like new. Kanye West, for instance, had this matrix look, this slightly dusty look. Maybe this would also be a solution. Just a few days ago, I was at Gamescom, which actually took place at the neighboring village, and it was quite interesting. Initially, I was probably shocked. As a gamer, you think gaming must be sexy, and there are many stereotypes that were fulfilled there. So if a sneaker was really upfront, then it was the Vans sneaker. But it was too superficial to say, I thought it was cooler like the Milano Fashion Week. That's not the point. They have completely different values, and we should have welcomed that they're not so superficial. And for them, it is not relevant to have the new sneaker. They really buy convenience, so that they can actually spend community time more conveniently. Or more diversity should be celebrated, that the punk sits next to the suit-wearing broker. This is utopian, but I think this seems to be the only solution, coexistence, because basically we share the same opinion. We know what sustainability is, we know about sneakers, but to solve this, you shouldn't go for one solution. It's a mix of various solutions, or am I wrong? No, I would share this view. Of course, there are different approaches that should be followed, and it is not only due to the brands, it's also due to shopper behavior. What, for us as shoppers, is important? Do we really need 100 pair of shoes? No, nobody needs 100 pairs of shoes. Of course not. It depends, it depends. Well, this already brings us to the different approaches you mentioned. But as you said, Stefan, we are approaching a time where this consumerism will no longer be possible. You won't be able to own 100 pair of shoes. This is a reality we have to face, both producers and shoppers, consumers, and this must be a realization resulting from a certain corporation. And I would very much welcome if there was more education on the part of the brands to really explain it to consumers. New Balance is doing this, and they often show videos of the production, how much work goes into such a pair of shoes. Who made my shoes? How were they made? And what is the difference between a high-quality product? How is leather obtained? How much water is consumed for this? And that an animal needs to be skinned. What is the difference between a vegetable E10 and a split leather? These things should be in focus, to my mind. And the working conditions of the people making our shoes, they should be of relevance to us as consumers. But they have to be introduced to us. We have to know about it. And we should insist on this. That we're being educated and that the conditions are improved. When I read the title, it was not only men and women. The first thing that struck me, the first idea that came across my mind was, who is on the producer's side? All of the people from the shiny world, they are excluded from this. But I think this is another very big topic. Yes, I have high hopes for the next generation. My son turns 12 now, and I think the gender story, this is growing together compared to 20 years ago. Men, women, everything is basically the same. I like people, whether they're female or male. And I do have high hopes that the big companies will actually catch up and that the unisex models will be more available. Yeah, but also retailers and the midmen have to join in. Just briefly, the Boston, wanted to buy a Boston of Birkenstock, and I got in which color? Huh? You know the name of the color? Mid-colored. I wanted to have a violet one, the purple one. I couldn't get it because it said it was for women. But they're only available until size 42, and this is why it's automatically a women's shoe. But the boys will ask for it, they will demand it. And my son actually walks to a nail designer and says, I want to have purple nails. And he doesn't care. And they will ask for it. They will insist on having a purple Birkenstock, and then retailers will have to react. And I really hope for that, and I rely on that. Yes, yes, hopefully so. Yeah, this would have helped me a lot. But generally speaking, unisex would be the solution. Yeah. And the shops, not men's shoes and women's shoes, but sort them by colors. Yeah, the range needs to be arranged differently to no longer separate these styles. If you walked up to Birkenstock and they had the style in a light gray, and for an extra price, you could actually have them in violet. Yeah, the extra price depends. I wouldn't actually spend an additional 100%. With cars, it's completely different. Today, people even pay more than 100% as an upgrade for a car. Well, with the Birkenstock, I'd say 20% as an extra price for a different color. So I'm thinking commercially, because when I actually can buy two for the same price or for this extra price, then I'm thinking economically. But this would be a service that Birkenstock could offer, to only produce it in light gray, but then offer a whole range range of colors for suede, because suede is wonderful to attain. This is not a big job. In my job, I often experience that people want something customized, something that is different from what is sold off the shelf. It's an age question, but to offer this service, it works. Nike ID or Nike by You, as it calls today, is a big thing. But it's not as successful as Travis Scott saying, well, if I've turned this shoe around, it's $2,000. Oh, God, I have to have this shoe. Yeah, you can do whatever you like. Yeah, but it's not available as a limited edition of 100 pieces. And it was not done by Jeremy Scott, but it's your design. But please differentiate here. Do we know the numbers, the sales numbers of Nike ID? I think that there's a clear relation. They're constantly sold out, the Dunk Low and the Airbags One, the ID, and it comes around every 100 years. This is what it feels like, and this is why they sell out immediately, especially the Dunks. Many, of course, copy favorite couple of ways because they can actually obtain it for a reasonable price instead of paying €1,000. And some are super creative. I think you underestimate shoppers these days. Most people are very creative. They are keen on having their own stitching. They have a name in the bag. It's not the super hyper creativity, but it's their own thing, and their consumers are interested in. For Nike, I can tell you for sure, they are selling that hotcake. Ah, shit. So we're really running out of time. I want to feel whether this has really helped you. Have you actually taken home a certain message? Have we been able to contribute to this? Gentleman first. Well, clear, yes, sure. The things that I thought about theoretically, it was good to find concrete examples for this. Also examples that help people in a male-dominated world. I think we've been given an insight into the issues, and I think that such a talk always produces results. Such a talk probably raises more questions than it actually delivers answers, but that's a good start. Challenge first, and then adapt the questions, and then you can find an answer. I think this is important. Thank you, Anke. Yes, I'm still sticking to the unisex thing. When we opened the store, we had lots of Asia shoes, and we were among the first ones to show many different styles. Through Asia, we dragged many guys into the store who actually left the store because they were frustrated because they couldn't find their size. So the unisex thing would simplify matters tremendously, and you could solve many problems with this. Jette. Well, apart from Julia, and I appreciate her view, but I feel as if we were actually coming from the same community scene. It was great to see different perspectives from the industry, from retail. This is what this panel discussion gave me. We all have ideas and wishes, but of course you also have to work within the framework of what's feasible. And it's quite interesting to hear what the other side feels like. Silke. Well, in communication, in marketing, it's interesting. One has to take the first step. How cool would it be if Nike would no longer have men's and women's styles in the online shop, in the web shop? They're usually the first ones. And if they did away with their sex thing, their gender thing, this is the Duncan and this is the Air Force, and they're available in these colors, and it no longer says male and female or men's and women's, just the sizes. I think this would be fantastic if they started rethinking the manufacturers. And Julia, I always wondered, wouldn't it be funny if she was talking to us with barefooted? Have you worn sneakers right now? No, I'm wearing socks. I'm wearing socks. Yeah, almost. So last words. Anything? Any insights? Absolutely. Yes, it was essential to hear how many different background stories exist for all of this. That we really come from different motivations and approach a topic from different realms. And I think it's interesting to hear that it is so versatile also in the women's segment. And I would like to thank you for this panel. What I learned from the preparatory talks, this will actually suffice me until 2063. I would like to thank the speakers with the sneakers and speakers. I would like to thank the shoes Düsseldorf for enabling this, and I would like to thank the audience watching online. And stay safe and have a wonderful remaining day. Thanks to all of the participants. Bye-bye.